This is the book that we're going through. Um, I'm streaming because I want to archive everything that I come across when I'm researching. Ultimately, I want to write a book. Um, so like, as far as my research goes, I'm starting with all the books that were written about this particular character. Um, the book I want to write is about Major John Fenwick, and uh, it's going to be towards the beginning. It's a lot of um, England, like English history, and then into West Jersey colonial history, more specifically the Salem 10th. So this book here, a sketch of the life and character of John Fenwick, written by John Clement. I guess that's his uh, date, 1818 to 1894. Friends Historical Association. I guess it's one of their catalogs. Published by H.S. Volkmar, Steam Power Printer, 1875 in Philadelphia. John Fenwick, 1618 to 1683. New Jersey History, Colonial Period, which I guess covers 1600 to 1775. This is on the what do they call that? Library of Congress. But anyway, this is the first book that I'm starting with, and I'm going to literally dissect every single page, and I'm going to just keep going through all the earliest written history books on John Fenwick, Salem 10th, Salem County, Cumberland County. Which there's probably a dozen that I know about right now, and most of them I've already read. I'm sure we'll find more as we go through all this. But I've never read it in the way that I'm going to now on here, because like I said, I'm literally going to dissect every page. And I actually have already started. I got up to page 15, but this is the first stream, so I'm going to go back to the beginning and just read through it and just kind of like give an overview of what I figured out with those pages so far and what I have in my notes. And then after I catch up with myself, I catch us up with myself, then the streams going forward are just going to be probably like an hour long each. And I'm just going to probably cover just one page each stream because, like I said, we're going to dissect it, go through it, and try to figure out as much as we can figure out, collect as much information as we can collect. Uh, I don't really know how things like this work yet, but there's really not many sources, like source information in these old books. And I don't know if that was just like a law that was passed later on. Excuse me. Actually, let's figure that out. No, that's not what I want. There we go. Required sources. Well, let's look on Wikipedia. That's surprising they're not asking for money. Which actually isn't a big deal. I actually fuck with Wikipedia hard. Um, Although I think that that's whack that Graham Hancock's page is locked up by someone who very publicly uh, what's the word? Defamation is the word, but I don't know how to use it in the tense that I'm trying to. But he's definitely a huge public critic of Graham Hancock, and he has the credentials to be able to edit Wikipedia pages, and he's locked Graham Hancock's up so he could say mean things about him or untrue things about him on Wikipedia, and no one can change or do anything about it. And until that changes, I'm not going to donate to Wikipedia. If gatekeeping and shit like that is changed and corrected, I will give more than they are even asking for as a donation. I've distracted myself. I don't know. Anyway, the point was that there's not like a lot of sources in it like there are in books that today, which is like kind of required for it to be a factual book. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to the beginning. 1954 stamp in it. I've always wondered what this says. Does this say America? Because that kind of looks like a J, right? JMLER. When we get into here, I don't know. Maybe it's just a signature, but it kind of looks like America, right? 1675. But it wouldn't have been called America at that point, I don't believe. So, not at this date. But 1675 is the year that John Fenwick sailed to New Jersey, West Jersey. Oh, shoot. A sketch of the life and character of John Fenwick by John Clement. Let me look at my notes because actually I don't know if it's the Salem County Historic Society or the New Jersey Historic Society. But somebody has John Clement's like a whole file. I think it's like I guess this is a good time to say that I'll probably say a lot of shit that's not true. And I definitely need to not do that. So sorry. And I hold myself accountable any chance that I get. But I was going to say, I think there's like 21 cases in the file. But I could be wrong about that. Yeah. I don't know how many boxes it is, but the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, which is located at 1300 Locust Street in Philadelphia, has a collection, the John Clement collection number 0791. But this book is at you can find this book on Google and read it for free like we're doing now. It's the Library of Congress. But John Clement, I don't know much about him yet, and I don't really know. I mean, I guess we should learn about him because to see like the validity of his work. What's the phrase I'm trying to think of? I don't know, but um, he was actually I think he was a judge in Haddonfield. I'm almost certain about that, but he was like I wonder if it'd be on Wikipedia. Let's try Google. Who is this guy? Anyway. No. Well, that's artwork. Let's go with John Clement, 1875. Nope. Nope. Why is this giving me a problem? No. I've looked all this up before, and I don't know why I can't remember it or find it. I'm pretty sure he was a judge. He was a judge in Haddonfield, New Jersey, but he was like really into history and stuff, and he collected. He got his hands on a lot of like original source material. Um, Let me just look through my notes real quick. Okay. Yeah, he had his hands on a lot of this original source materials, which I think is in that collection. And what isn't, I think that the Salem Historic Society probably has a collection with some pieces of his, but I don't know that to be sure. But he wrote a few books, sketches of the first immigrant settlers, Newton Township, revolutionary reminiscences of Camden County, historical sketch of the Baptist Church in Haddonfield, a sketch of William Biddle and Thomas Biddle. I mean, he there's a handful of things that he wrote. Um, Go back and I'll show you in the John Clement collection. There's deeds, indentures, surveys, and other papers collected by John Clement, judge, and I don't know how to pronounce this word. Collector of antiques, antiquarian, antiquarian of Haddonfield, New Jersey. The manuscripts pertain largely to southern New Jersey, but include some documents for Pennsylvania lands. The New Jersey material consists of deeds from 1677 to 1852. That's the 1600s. That's the years that interest me. Indentures 1681 to 1884. War. What's the full description? Warrants and surveys 1616 to 1865. That's super exciting. Copies of maps and drafts, notes, maps, and memoranda on Newton Township Town Meeting Minute Book. I'm not interested in Newtown Township, but the meeting books are cool. And like any old like church, courts, any public type of place like that is formal and like keeps records of stuff. Those are all cool. Like I got this one here. My mom got it for me. Early church records of Salem County, New Jersey, and I actually this includes the Friends Meeting House from that town as well, which is all the meeting house records of that time definitely predate any church records that we have because like they had their own that was like a church too. Uh, so this includes the Salem Meeting House records as well, which has a few of my like 11th and 10th great grandparents, marriages, maybe some deaths. Um, that's cool. And if anyone who is into this particular area, history and stuff, or has family pertaining to like this area, message me, hit me up. I can give you whatever records are in there, give you a copy of it, or you can probably look it up. So anyway, that's John Clement. It seems pretty legit. Well, let's go back to his book. Published by the French Historical Association of Philadelphia. 1875. Life and character of John Fenwick. The reader of history is naturally drawn towards a more intimate acquaintance with the persons by whose acts such history or originated, to be better informed in regard to the lives, characters, and motives of such, and more familiar with the resources, the talents, and the leading traits of those whose names cannot be separated from its inception and development. So much of interest is embodied that the inquiring mind tends in that direction involuntarily, and every incident relating thereto is duly considered. The causes that originated, first of all, that whole first line is hard as fuck. Well, not first line, but like, let's see, from here to here, and I actually wrote that in my notes because, like, you know how like sometimes you put quotes in, like when you write books and shit. Sometimes quotes are like different places. For me, a history nerd since I was 9, like that's a fire line. Maybe I'm just nerding out. Anywho, um, the causes that originated the purpose intended are sought for, and the inquiry does not end until they be fully traced. And that's what we're doing here with this book and the next couple books that we'll probably go through. Excuse me. Whether the object to be attained be disinterested or selfish, of personal aggrandizement, or enlarged philanthropy, philanthropy, therapy, philanthropy. I don't know what this fucking word means, though. Um, it's like a picture, so I can't even like copy and paste it and look it up. Let me look it up on my phone. Aggrandizement is a formal, disapproving noun that means to make something or someone appear more important or powerful than they actually are. There's a couple of cases actually in this book that the author does this very much. It can also refer to the act of increasing someone's power, wealth, or prestige. For example, you might accuse someone of self aggrandizement if they paid their resume with awards or volunteer work. Pad, not pay. Pad their resume with awards or volunteer work. Aggrandizement. Interesting. Whether the object to be attained be disinterested or selfish, of personal aggrandizement or enlarged philanthropy, whether actuated by religious zeal or military ambition, the first participants draw around them the thoughtful consideration of every student. The lapse of time adds to the obscurity of events that bear upon a subject sought to be understood, leaving many things impossible of explanation, however carefully examined. Which we're going to find a lot too, trying to figure out John Fenwick's life. Like, it took a lot of piecing together of other stories and other characters in these historical stories and their records, and like putting pieces together to kind of figure out like John Fenwick's life. There's no like, even in this book, this is actually probably, out of all the old books we're going to read, this is probably the best, my favorite one, and probably the most like detailed, and probably the most factual, because as we'll find out later, and even in this book there's a lot of errors, and maybe like what he's trying to say in the beginning of all this is really that like, I guess that's something to speak to. It's like he. What I take from it is like he's saying like I'm a history nerd, and like sometimes history nerds like sometimes we like sweeten up the story, or like I don't want to say exaggerate would probably be a good word. Um, Romanticize, uh, um, cause like right here it says wrong conclusions are too often arrived at for want of proper evidence, and errors allowed to creep in and be accepted, which in the light of truth would at once be swept away. I don't know. I think he's just like addressing that whole issue of like, with history, we want to be as factual as we can be, but like when you just like romanticize these stories and like the moments and all that, like it's really easy for like speculation to take over. It's really easy for error to happen. It's really easy for like the dilute the actual historical story. But it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do because that's I think that's just human nature. I don't know if anything that I just said made sense or not. And I'm sorry if it doesn't. If the motives that control the action of men be not understood or appreciated by such as are contemporary with them, scarcely as much need to be expected of those who are forced to draw their opinions from results only, and that after centuries have passed away. The heat of party controversy, the rivalry of ambitious persons, and too often the spirit of envious detraction hides the real object of individuals and leaves inquiries in doubt forever after. The history of the first settlement on the shores of the American continent under the patronage of the British government, although not very remote in point of time, is not satisfactory nor free from doubt in many particulars. The religious and political agitations then existing within the realm increase the difficulty of reaching the truth, and hence much is left to inference and speculation. Hey, I just said that. Not to go beyond the Commonwealth, enough may be seen in the unsettled condition of Great Britain to convince that every incident relating to religion or politics bears a partisan hue, and cannot be seen in its proper light. The persistent endeavor of one party to get advantage of and destroy the other left but little opportunity to strip their motives or actions of prejudice and arrive at a fair and dispassionate conclusion. Thorny's excitements, and while this condition of things existed, John Fenwick was born and reared in their midst. The elements of strife were infused into his education, and he regarded military success as the great purpose of life. The old feudal system, as established by William the Conqueror, had not passed away, but the light of education and free opinion was loosening its hold upon the people. The divine right of kings was being questioned, and the prerogatives of the crown better defined. These were steps in the right direction and ended in the overthrow of the government. No man of any decision of character could remain neutral amidst these contests between the people and the king, and John Fenwick found himself on the popular side and in Cromwell's army. He was the second son of Sir William Fenwick, Baronet, who represented the county of Northumberland in the last Parliament under the Commonwealth in 1659. That's interesting. That's something I'll need to remember. That Sir William Fenwick baronet. He represented the county of Northumberland in the last parliament under the Commonwealth in 1659. Because for me, it's his son that I'm like interested in. So by 1659, like John Fenwick is, let's see. I can't remember exactly now. If was the execution of Charles the First 38, 1638, 39, or 1648, 49? We'll find that out in a few minutes, actually. But I kind of just forget about this guy. And one of four brothers, Edward, John, Roger, and Ralph. John Fenwick's the guy we're interested in. In 1640, Sir William had his residence at Staten Hall of Staten Manor in the parish of Horsley, Cumberland. It's interesting because the history, the colonial history that I'm covering in America, in New Jersey, half of it is Cumberland County, but this is, I guess, Cumberland County, England, or maybe it's not a county. I'm not quite sure, actually. And where he had considerable landed estate. We gotta check this house out. It's still there, actually, the old Stanton Hall. It's for sale. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but Stanton, a hamlet in England, Old Hall. Was that a map? I don't want a map. I don't want a map. That's no help. This is it here, though. That's a cool picture. No. It's actually for sale, or it was for sale. I had a whole bunch of pictures. This is it here. Think. No. That's not it. Cause it's a garden now. It has public gardens now. Let's go Northumberland, England. All right, this is definitely about it. I've read this before. This is actually I forget what book it's from. We actually get a lot of information about the Fenwicks from this book. What the heck is the name of this book? Anyway, there's this old history book that was written like a long time ago, and it's basically just a big collection of like all the actual source, like original source material that like validates who is who and who owned what and what buildings look like what at what years according to who. But I really am trying to show you a picture of this place because it's actually pretty. It's really pretty, actually. There's like 5, 6 different gardens. The hall. Yeah, the hall is owned by someone. Modern alterations have so defaced the tower which John Corbett occupied in the time of Henry the Sixth. Is that Henry the Sixth? That few traces of it are now observable in the slashed and stone mullioned windows put into it by the Fenwicks. Are patched with bundles of clouts and straw, or are open to the owls and dolls. Oh, this is explained in one source. So this is actually probably a really old source. It is not, however, entirely tenantless. A person who earns a livelihood out of the sunny and well-walled gardens lives in a part of it. A little shop is kept in another. A third portion of it is converted into a poorhouse, and the rest of its rooms are either unoccupied or only occasionally used as granaries. Some of the rooms are wainscoted with high panels and broad stiles painted in imitation marble, and others hung with tattered tapestry. That's pretty interesting because this is around about the time that well, Charles II came into power in 1660 when he restored the crown, I think. That's interesting. I don't really know what it means right now, but other information from reference one indicates that Staten Hall in the reign of Charles II was haunted by Vittage, the Covenanter, who also stayed at the Horn Hall. Reference to the hall and Vietch is also made in reference to. It appeared that Vietch moved from Harnern to Stanton in May 1677. He narrowly escaped being taken there on one occasion, but got into a hole within the lining of a great window which had been made on purpose, for the whole room was lined about with wainscot. Um, Fenwick came to America in 1675, and I'm pretty sure that he left the estate with his second wife, but he did have a lot of money issues, which we'll get to eventually. And I don't know when. I don't. 1677. I don't know. Sounds like it. I don't know if she still would have had it or not. He had a lot of troubles actually by the time he came to America. Anyway, try and get pictures. See just pictures of the gardens. Yo, someone needs to get some photos panned out. It's all up close. Anyway, let's go back to Google. Ooh. Get out of here. What the fudge? The Hall. Stanton Hall has somewhat of an unknown start in history. Parts of the building date back to the 14th century. The building was listed in a survey from around 1415 where it was named Torres de Stanton. See, that's what I'm talking about. Those original sources. There's a book, an old book, maybe written in. Well, this one was written in 1415, which was more of a survey book. But there was a later book, maybe written in the 1700s sometime, that like compiles all the original source information into like chronological story or whatever. The building is described as a peel tower and also a probable Bastille. Oh, Basel. Basel. I just learned what a Basel is, too, by the way. A Basel, I think, is like not as big as a castle, more of the size of like a mansion or home or whatever, like a mini castle, I guess. Um, a form of a fortified farmhouse or house built on the southwest slope overlooking the valley. Throughout the years, the alteration have defaced the original tower windows, walls, fireplace, and stairs moved around. If you look closely, you can see these on the outer wall today, but with no foundations and the walls in place are over a meter thick. During the time of Henry VI, John Corbett occupied the site. In Henry the is that eighth era, Sir Ralph Fenwick, the High Sheriff of Northumberland, lived in the tower, and the Fenwick family occupied the hall for almost 200 years until 1730. Okay. The Evening Chronicle reported an article about the building in 1972. It's a bit like Orwell's Animal Farm after the animals took over. This refers to the numerous. Well, I can't read that. What does that even say? For the animals. And in 1897, the hall was partly occupied by a blacksmith. Interesting. 1630, 1530. Yeah, 1530 is probably around the time the Fenwicks come on the scene. Um, that makes sense because the first before the Fenwicks lived here, they lived because John Fenwick's father was born at Wallington Castle, which we'll look up in a few. And then I think when the family first arrived at the area, somewhere early 1500s, late 1400s, um, the place, the first place they lived was Fenwick Tower, which is technically not there no more. Parts of the foundation of the original tower is built into a home that's still standing there, a farmhouse, but the actual tower is not really there anymore. But that was called Fenwick's Tower, and that was probably the first like scene, first residence where the Fenwick family was. This does look like a pretty cool place, though. Oh, there's a picture of the house. It was listed for like 1.5 million. That's definitely that's not it. I don't know why that picture was there. These are all it. That's it. There. I don't know. The best pictures I got of it were actually off of a. Oh, there's the ponds. Was off of a realty realtor website. See if we can just go to images. Here we go. Look how beautiful this house is. And it's privately owned. Look at that. I wonder if these is like walls, original walls. That would be fire. What? Fucking gorgeous. Could you imagine, man? Damn. So apparently the gardens around it is all public. Like it's like a, I don't know if it's like a public park. If you're just welcome to go there. If you gotta like, I don't know. But as you see, like you see, we're looking at like that White House. We saw the zoomed out photo. That White House had nothing to do with this property. See, look, where's that White House? It's nowhere. Anyway, what happened? Womp womp womp. There we go. 1640, Sir William had his residence at Stanton Hall, that place we just was looking at, of Stanton Manor in the parish of Horsley, Harsley, Cumberland, and where he had considerable landed estate. The mother, Elizabeth, was perhaps of one of the border families and brought to her husband additional property, increasing his wealth and influence. I forget who. I actually figured out the family that Elizabeth, who they just said was John Fenwick's mother. Um, she was. Let's see. Let me look at my notes. I can't. I don't think I wrote it down. I don't think I wrote it down. But she came from a prominent family. Which, like it says here, added a lot to the Fenwick estate. John was born in 1618 at Staten Hall, but the day of the month is not known. I hope. I mean, listen, if these guys didn't find it, then chances are it couldn't be found. But there is a lot of error in these books, so maybe it could just be something that they couldn't find. You remember, like, we have the internet, they didn't. And when you consider that fact, actually, it kind of does make these books a lot more impressive because there is a lot of like material in here, and writing this book in the 1800s without the internet, without telephones, um, without airplanes, and getting materials and records and copies of shit from other countries. And I'm sure they had some money too. These cats, actually, most of these people who wrote these books were all pretty freaking wealthy. So money makes things a lot easier in any regard. So the day and month isn't known, but he was born in 1618. Oh, that's what I was saying. I hope to figure that out. It would be really cool. It would be really cool to figure out like what the day and month is. Hold on, I got a phone call. I'll be back. I'm back. Yeah. So I definitely want to. I definitely think that would be so fucking fire if we figured out the day and month he was born. We got this. We got this. In 1636, he was styled knight and baronet, and 5 years after that time, he married Elizabeth, daughter of Sir Walter Covert, knight of Slanghin, Sussex. This lady was the mother of his children, and from her came the direct and collateral branches in New Jersey. Um, what that means there, the collateral branches in New Jersey. I don't know all the small details to it, but later on we'll figure out more. But it's kind of through the connections that he makes through his marriage with her. First of all, she comes from a prominent family. Um, Side note, when I first read this, I got so excited because like I saw Covert, but I was thinking Calvert, which is Lord Baltimore's that family, Baltimore, Maryland, all that jazz. Um, oh, I guess I never even told you that Major John Fenwick. I'm almost certain is my 12th great grandfather. So the fact that if he would have married someone from the Calvert family, that would have been fire. That just would have been fire. But that's not the case. And anywho, uh, she comes from a prominent family. So him marrying her, one, adds to his estate, like happened with his daddy. And two, he makes connections through the marriage with her, through who she knows, through, or who her father probably knows. Society ran a little different with men and women at this time. We're talking about the 1600s. So anywho, it's through those connections that he makes that kind of helps him, sends him down the route of getting to America. I know I wrote notes. Let me see. The family was of Saxon origin and formed a powerful clan in Northumberland. Their ancient fastness was in the Fennylands about Stamfordham. Yo, it's a motherfucker when you can't even read your own handwriting. God damn. Which I just said that right here. The family was of Saxon origin and formed a powerful clan in Northumberland. Their ancient fastness was in the Fennylands, about, and that's probably where like Fenwick comes from, because I think like all Fenwick means is like farmers of a particular area. Baronet is I wrote some notes about baronets, barons, and baronets. King James the First of England was a guy who wrote the Bible, or had the Bible, the Geneva Bible maybe rewritten, the King James version. You catch my drift. King James the First of England first created the title in 1611, which is interesting. I think 1611 is when the King James Bible came out, or maybe it was 1618. I don't know. Look that up for me, or not. I'll look it up later. I shouldn't ask anyone to do nothing for me. That's rude of me. I should be providing the information. Usually passed from father to son, so it was hereditary. Right? Is that still called hereditary when titles pass from generation to generation? Ranks below a baron but above a knight. King created the title to raise funds for the crown to finance the plantation of Ulster in Ireland. So yeah, that title he like basically gave a bunch of like wealthy families opportunity to buy social status, which in these times went a really long way, and then he used that money to fund bad things. I'm being silly. But basically, they were occupying another country, enslaving those folks who lived in that country, exploiting them, and you know how the story goes. So, you call it what you will. I say bad. The family was of Saxon origin and formed a powerful clan in Northumberland. Their ancient fastness was in the fenny lands about Stamfordham, Stamfordham, a small town near the southern boundary of the shire before named. Northumberland is like just a pretty dope county, like historically speaking. Period, because like this is the bordering county of like Scotland and England, and like over the course of all these wars and kingships and all that, like Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, like it all like went back and forth between like who was in control of who and who ran who and who had their own sovereignty and blah blah blah. And like in Northumberland, you have like very historical prominent families like the Percys and the Fenwicks, which it'll actually note in this book here the role that the Fenwicks played with the Percys, because a lot of the like original earls in Northumberland were all like the Percys and such. And uh when like Scotland was on its own, is like these families in this area, the Northumberland area, was kind of like the buffer area where like they kind of like protected the border of England at different points. But at the same time, like a lot of the earls in from Northumberland all played roles in like when they wanted to overthrow the crown or whatever. They always had a hand in it. They were the ones who always went at the crown a lot of times throughout history, and a lot of times they paid for it as well. But it just makes that place like super significant, and it is full of badasses, like legit badasses. Let's move on. Page 6. During the reign of Henry the in 1100, the head of the house was advanced by the king, and with various changes, it was prominent in England for several centuries. In Burke's valuable work on the extinct and dormant baronetcies, baronetcies, reference is made to this name with much reliable and interesting information. And that's one of those earlier books that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that kind of like compiles data from over history, original source materials and stuff. Very interesting book. I never read those books like from cover to cover like we're doing this one or whatever, but it's definitely good to like rake through, like kind of comb through and get dates. They're so reliable, like, just to get the dates to kind of pan out our timeline. The clan was known as the Fierce Fenwicks and the Fearless Fenwicks. Their slogan or war cry was "A Fenwick, a Fenwick, a Fenwick." What interesting spelling. The clan was the constant ally of the Percys. Um, Quick side note, just for my record, um, the Pierce family, which kind of belongs to like the Gould family. I kind of belong to the Pierce family. Um, all the Pierces, at least in South Jersey and New Jersey, um, all can trace their lineage back to two brothers, Richard and Anthony Pierce, who were their father was Captain Richard Pierce the third. Their mother was probably an indentured uh, she was from Barbados, which Robert, or not Robert, I keep saying fucking Robert, Richard Pierce, Captain Richard Pierce, most likely owned land in or plantation in. Um, Barbados. I forget. Beijing. What do you call people from Barbados? I'm sorry if that sounds so bad. What do you call people from Barbados? I think the native population calls it Beijing. Bajan, Beijins. I was kind of close. Or Barbadian. I don't. Uh, anyway, moving on. Moving on. Um, their mom. So chances are, since she was Beijing's, uh, chances are she was an indentured servant or she was a slave. Um, but anyway, that was their mother, and we'll get into all those weird politics later on. Um, and they ended up coming to Greenwich, New Jersey, sometime in the 1700s. Um, Anywho, Captain Richard Pierce III. If you keep tracing his lineage back, you can trace it back to the Percys, and that's why the last name is Pierce. It was just like over a course of time, Percy and the changing and of the spelling and the changing of the phonetics of it, as some families do sometimes. The further you branch out, over time, Percy became Pierce for that particular lineage. Um, so if all that to be true, and I never really went to the end of that rabbit hole, but it not only does my lineage go connect to the great Fenwick warriors of Northumberland, but maybe also the Percys too. So that's like super exciting for a history nerd. Um, but a lot of that has to be ironed out. Um, the clan was the constant ally of the Percys, attended them on all occasions, and known throughout the border as brave and faithful soldiers. The seat of the House of Percy was at Onwick Castle in Northumberland, one of the most ancient and formidable in that region. Of the family, it has been said, not more famous in arms than distinguished for its alliances, the House of Percy stands preeminent for the number and rank of the families which are represented by the present Duke of Northumberland, whose banner consequently exhibits an assemblage of nearly 900 armorial ensigns. Oh, I'm fucking going down in flames here. Among which are those of King Henry the seventh of several younger branches of the blood royal of the sovereign houses of France, Castile, Leon, and Scotland, and of the ducal houses of Normandy and Brittany, forming a galaxy of heretic honors altogether unparalleled. The ducal seats include four castles: Alnwick, Warworth, Keldor, and Purdue, in Northumberland, Stanwich, and Warrington Parks, Lion House, and Northumberland House. If you are interested in looking at any of these castles, which we're gonna do for the Fenwick ones, there's like a website, Castle Finders. Let me just look it up. It's like Castle Finders or Castle Finders. Yeah, Castle Finders. And it had actually, this isn't the website, but this looks just as resourceful, right? Because you can go England, Wales, Scotland. Let's go England. Let's see. Alnwick was one of them. So there's that. That was a Percy's castle. That's pretty fucking big, actually. That's fire. That's so pretty. All right, lady. Flexing. Wow. That's a fucking pretty castle, man. That is a pretty ass castle. All right, let's see. Let's check out a couple of them other ones. Fuck it, why not? Warkworth. Let's see. Let's go to W. Warkworth. Look at this. All right, let's check out Warrington Parks. Let's see. Nope, I don't see that one. Lion House and Northumberland House. I don't see Lion House. Maybe these are just castles. These are just the castles. Let me see if I notice anyone that. Nope. Alright, let me see if I find that one I was telling you about. Nope, that's not it. Nope. But there was another one anyway. Was that it? Nah, hold on. There we go. This is the website. Castle Find. Isn't that the same website? Castle Finders? It's the same website. I don't know why one looks the way it does, but this is the one I have saved. Um, and there were, I forget why. This one shows towers too, which helps us out because, or maybe it doesn't. I will show you a castle on here in a few minutes when we come to it in this book. It's later when John Fenwick actually becomes part of Cromwell's army. It's not there. But anyway, Castle Finders you'll be able to check out. Check out oh, I should have left that up. Sir Walter Scott, whose accuracy as an antiquarian was only excelled by his gifts as a poet and novelist, his lady heroine to use in her song. I think he's like listing this to be like just another source of like explaining that time period or something, or validating something with that area, time, family, areas. I don't know. Before James the Fourth, King of Scotland, these words: "O young Lochinvar is come out of the west. Through all the wide border his steed was the best. And save his good broadsword, he weapons had none. He rode all unarmed, he rode all alone. So faithful in love and so dauntless in war, there never was a knight like the young Lochinvar. One touch to her hand and one word to her ear when they reached the hall door and the charger stood near. So light to the erope, the fair lady he swung, so light to the saddle before her he sprung. She is won. We are gone over bank, bush, and square. They'll have fleet steeds that follow, quoth young Lochinvar. There was mounting mong Grames of Netherby clan, Foresters, Fenwicks, and Musgraves. They rode and they ran. There was racing and chasing on Canobilia, but the lost bride of Netherby never did they see. So daring in love and so dauntless in war, have ye ever heard of gallant like young Lochinvar? I'm really sorry about all of that. The beauty and talent of Lady Heron infatuated? What is that word? The king infatuated the king. Infatuated. That has to be a U. That says N, but maybe that's a typo. Infatuated. The beauty and talent of Lady Heron infatuated the king, much to the scandal of the court. The defeat of his army and his own death at Flodden Field has been imputed to his gallantries in that direction, a fertile subject for gossip and poetic effusion. Excuse me. The Tower of Fenwick at Whittington in Northumberland near the coast of the North Sea shows its antiquity and its root strength and scanty. All right, let's try to look that up real quick. The Fenwick Tower, the Tower of Fenwick. Um, there's definitely not going to be no pictures. Fenwick Tower was the 12th century tower house at Fenwick. There's a tower house, if y'all can see that. A tower house is a particular type of stone structure built for defensive purposes as well as habitation. It began to appear in the Middle Ages. Blah, 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 blah. At Fenwick. Look, that says does not exist. Oh, page does not exist. The house was the home of the Fenwick family from the 12th century, so even earlier than I thought, until they moved to Wallington. That's the picture I want to show you. That's the house that I'll read that in a second. But that's the house before Staten Hall. Before Staten Hall. So they lived in the Fenwick Tower from the 12th century until they moved to Wallington in the 16th century. Right, yeah, early 1500s when they moved there. So 12 would be... So really kind of like the 1100s, 1200s is kind of when they came up on the scene in Northumberland. In 1378, John Fenwick was granted a license to crenulate the house. Okay, they'll like wall it up and shit. Okay. The tower was largely, and that's not the same John Fenwick that we're studying. Let me tell you how much of a nightmare it is that every generation, everyone just names their kids after each other because you have a John Fenwick, multiple John Fenwicks, in fact, each generation. So it really, really, and the only time it ever gets easy with this type of stuff is when you have the political or the like militant descriptions of people. Like in our case, Major John Fenwick. He's the only Major John Fenwick. But his generation, he had a couple cousins named John Fenwick, actually. One, which I think has something to do with the South Carolina plantation, which is a whole different branch of the Fenwicks and different history. And then there was like another cousin, John Fenwick, who was executed because he got executed for like treason and shit like that later on. He was, I think, a little bit younger than the Major John Fenwick, but it makes it real confusing. So this John Fenwick is probably like a great grandfather to Major John Fenwick, the guy we're interested in, or somewhere along those lines. A grandfather so many times back. But apparently he was given... Yeah, so he was probably given the property in some sort of like gifted fashion or whatever, and then he was given the license to fortify it. The tower was largely demolished in about 1775 at the time a hoard of medieval gold coins was discovered. That's something that you see repeated a lot. It must have been a really big fucking deal because like it gets mentioned a lot in it. But at the same time, it also validates like certain time frames and shit. The sparse remains of the tower are now incorporated into a 17th century farmhouse and are protected by Grade 2 listed building status. On the 15th of February 2010, human remains were found buried next to the cottage in the hamlet of Fenwick Towers. The radiocarbon dating of the remains indicated they likely dated to the 13th or 14th centuries. Here we go. Burke's genealogical and heretic history of the extinct and dormant Baronetcies of England, Ireland, and Scotland, 1844. That book is a very, very helpful book. Oh, let's check out this now, real quick. Wallington, get picture. How fucking cute is that? Whoa. Wallington is a country house and gardens located about 12 miles west of Morpeth, Northumberland, England, near the village of Camboo. It has been owned by the National Trust since 1942 after it was donated complete with the estate and farms of Sir Charles Phillips Trevelyan. The first donation of its kind. It is a Grade 1 listed building. Some of the wealth of the Trevelyan family derived from the holding of slaves in Grenada. Interesting. Okay. Grenada is in the Eastern Caribbean Sea. Derived from the holding of slaves in Grenada. Whoa. Okay, so the guy who donated this house to a national trust was... Oh, he was a baronet too. Sir Charles Phillips Trevelyan. Politician. Served as the president of the Board of Education. Where'd he go? In 1924 and between 29 and 31. I'm interested in that now. What was the name? What is this guy? Hold on. Lord Trevelyan? What? The main topic of the lecture was her family's links to slavery. They are descendants of Sir Charles Trevelyan, the 19th century British civil servant and colonial administrator who owned a slave plantation in the Caribbean island of Grenada. In 2023, the family publicly apologized for its ownership of more than 1,000 enslaved Africans in Grenada and promised to pay reparations. Her experience as a journalist has helped her work as a slave trade reparations advocate. Ms. Trevelyan made a documentary for the BBC called Confronting the Past in 2022. Aristocratic British families to make history by traveling to the Caribbean and publicly apologizing for its ownership of more than 1,000 enslaved Africans. The Trevelyan family, which has more notable ancestors, is also paying reparations to the people of Grenada, where it owned 6 sugar plantations. Last weekend, the family met online and agreed to sign a letter of apology for the enslavement of captive Africans. 42 members of the family have so far signed, and more signatures are expected. In 1835, the Trevelyan family received £26,898, a huge sum at the time, in compensation from the British government for the abolition of slavery a year earlier. The enslaved men, women, and children received nothing and were forced to work a further 8 years unpaid as apprentices. A £100,000 fund donated by the New York-based BBC correspondent Laura Trevelyan will be formally launched in Grenada on 27th February by Sir Ely Beckles. Well, that's really nice that they're trying to right their wrongs. Sir Charles Trevelyan. Let's look up this guy, Sir Charles. As a young man, he worked with the colonial government in Calcutta, India. Okay. Role in the Irish famine. On the 21st January 1840, entered on the duties of Assistant Secretary of Her Majesty in London. Okay. Legacy and honors. Trevelyan was appointed 3 days later on March 1874. He was created the first Trevelyan Baronet of Wallington. Oh, he was already there when his cousin Walter Calverley died at Wallington. Okay. Okay, yeah, he definitely, yeah, all right, 1800s. We're talking like 200 years after the life of John Fenwick and Sir William Fenwick. Interesting. I wonder when the house left. We need to ask that. I'll have to remember that question when this house left. Because if it was in. Actually, I think I might have come across that at some point. Anyway, I've gone down a crazy rabbit hole all to show you this house. He looks like a fucking creep, honestly. Children, Sir George II. What's this guy do? My bad. Yo, my neighbor upstairs is so loud it really sounds like people are breaking into my house sometimes. It's crazy. Be tripping me out, man. I'm sitting here tripping. Uh, one of the grandsons to the guy, the slave owner guy. Oh well, he died. Oh, he died at age 90. Okay. Damn, he had a lot of money for that time. But the grandson, the third grandson, this guy George Macaulay Trevelyan, a historian. I wonder how much he addressed his slave owning grandfather. And then this guy, excuse me, he was the great great grandson of Sir John Clement. Oh man. Okay. So they owned Wallington, which the family had owned since 1777. Welcome Hotel, Warwickshire. Oh man. They had 7 children, including his eldest son, Sir George Trevelyan, whom he disinherited. Why? Why'd he do that? I wonder if we can find out. Oh, there we go. Jesus. Why did disinherit his son George? Pfft, he is a dog. Oh, this is a PDF. Oh shit. A very British family. Trevelyan's in their world. This is probably a really fire book, honestly. All our sources. This is probably a really dope book, but I'm not interested in that family. I need to move on. All right, I'll be back in a few minutes. Ooh, okay. Where are we at? Page 7. So anyway, the Tower of Fenwick. That's where I originally started. Tower of Fenwick is located in a house near Matfin, Northumberland, England. This house is a historic farmhouse that incorporates the remains of the 12th century Fenwick Tower, which is where the name originates. Historical significance: the Fenwick family owned the tower and surrounding land for centuries. Current structure: the existing house is a mix of old and new, with the original tower incorporated into the building. Location: you can't find it near the village. You can find it near the village of Matfin in Northumberland. It would be cool to see. See the Fenwick Hall plantation stories. That's the South Carolina Fenwick family story, which ultimately can be traced back to the same family and folks that we're tracing our John Fenwick back to. They were cousins, I think, or distant cousins, some along those lines. I really like it shows this picture here, but that don't look like a very old farmhouse, honestly. So, that's Fenwick Island, which is in Delaware, which is you would think had something to do with John Fenwick, but actually has nothing to do with Fenwick at all. Here's this house. What is this? Is this it? Oh yeah, so that's it. Where'd it go? We got a picture right there. Or is this it? Newcastle upon Tyne? Maybe? Fenwick Tower, Northumberland. So this must be the old farmhouse that has the tower incorporated inside of it. I mean, this kind of looks like it. Could be it. Fenwick History Tour? Okay. Oh shit, this guy wrote a book, okay. Philip Fenwick Elliott at Fenwick, Northumberland. Okay. In the meantime, I have just got back from a quick trip to Northumberland with my brother Philip, a sort of sight view for my book 500 Fenwicks, which is a history of the Fenwick family. Probably of no real interest to anyone else, at any rate, anyone who is not a Fenwick. You'd be wrong, buddy, but respect, because that's how I feel about this shit. How I feel about this stream right here, actually. Like, there's no way anyone is interested in this at all. It is notable that the Fenwicks retained their position as an upper middle class family in a fairly small area in Northumberland since at least the mid 1200s and probably earlier, not really moving far geographically or socially, so there were plenty of knights, a trio of somewhat unattractive baronets, and numerous army officers, lawyers, clergy, and colonialists, and of course, umpteen high sheriffs and landowners. There's also a surprising number of really rather nice, substantial houses built by the Fenwicks still around, and the current owners of each of them were extraordinarily helpful in allowing me to take some photographs. I will post some when I tidy them up and get necessary permissions. Fenwick itself, where the family built their first castle, probably not much more than a peel tower at first, but later expanded, is just a small ruin these days. Most of the stone have been reused for more modern buildings, but other fortifications, like my great grandfather Sir Roger Fenwick's peel tower at Bitchfield, remain remarkably intact. Let's go to Tower. Bitchfield Towers. Because that might be the Roger Fenwick that... Did it say Roger or Ralph? That's... was the brother of... Oh, that is... Okay. Probably these here. Probably this one. But anyway, that might be the brother of Major John Fenwick. Why did I go? Oh, right here. Yeah. Interesting. 500 Fenwicks. I wonder if that book ever came out. The Tower of Fenwick at Whittington in Northumberland. Okay. Page 8. Let's see. Notes I have for page 6. Fenwicks can be dated back to 1100s under King Henry I. Extinct and dormant Baronet T. Burks. Clan was known as the Fierce Fenwicks and the Fearless Fenwicks. Battle cry Fenwick, a Fenwick, a Fenwick. House of Percy was, yeah, we looked at that. Fenwick Tower may have been the first seat of the family in the 12th century. We're going on to page 8 now. Okay. Alright, we're going to learn a little more about Fenwick Tower here, I think. In the ninth year of Edward III, 1334, Inquisition was held at Newcastle Castle, and Johannes Fenwick was twice appointed sheriff. Fenwick Tower was enlarged and protected better from the Scots. In the 12th century, Sir Robert Fenwick endowed the Abbey of Newminster, whatever that means. And then we're switching over to my other journal. That was my regular scribble journal, and then I didn't want to keep. I used that for everything else, and I wanted the history stuff to be, specific and cataloged a certain way. So I moved on to a different journal. Okay. Limits similar to those built by the Saxon invaders during the 5th and 6th centuries. This was probably the first seat of the family after their coming over, and whence it may be traced through many of the shires in England. They're talking about Fenwick Tower. In the 9th year of the reign of Edward III, 1334, an inquisition was had of Newcastle Castle, and Johannes Fenwick was twice appointed sheriff. During that time, it was much enlarged and strengthened, being an important point of protection and defense against the Scots, like I mentioned earlier. In these warlike times, this place had no commercial importance, but has grown to be one of the largest ports in England. The enmities of former generations have passed away, and what was once a necessary appendage to every town is now visited by the curious to see the means of defense in a barbarous age. In the 12th century, Sir Robert Fenwick of Northumberland endowed the Abbey of Newminster in the same shire with two parts of his villa of Erdington in Cumberland, thus showing his liberty towards and his adherence to the Catholic Church. These endowments of lands, which at that time in many cases had but little value in themselves, as time progressed and the resources of that nation were developed, yielded large revenues to the church and its adherents. By this means were the old edifices reared, combining beauty, grandeur, and strength in a wonderful degree, showing that however rude and barbarous our ancestors may have been, they were skilled in every department of ornamental architecture. Well may the English nation be proud of the many ruins of towers, castles, abbeys, and churches now standing within its borders, which, even in their delapsed condition, are not excelled by modern art. Respect, though. But though destroyed by devastation's hand, by fury gilded or outrageous zeal, your ruins now majestically grand bid solemn contemplation there to dwell. Bid solemn contemplation there to dwell. In the 9th year of King Henry the 7th, 1517, Roger Fenwick was appointed constable of the same castle, showing that through several centuries the family had not only remained in this place but was in favor with and had the confidence of the ruling monarchs. This is still Fenwick Tower. Although no continuous history of the family can be had, nor any complete genealogy secured, yet enough is gathered to show that talent, loyalty, and courage were not wanting and appreciated always by their sovereign. This is what I mentioned earlier, where there's just these books that have like different records of different times, and it gets all like compiled together, and we're kind of able to make out what this story is. That's what I was trying to say earlier with this line right here. Although no continuous history of the family can be had, nor any complete genealogy secured, yet enough is gathered to show that the talent, loyalty, and courage were not wanting and appreciated always by their sovereign. At the time advanced, this element was tempered by more peaceful pursuits, and the work of the soldier gave way to the duty of the citizen. The nations emerged from war and found that peace developed industry, plenty, and contentment among the people. Time rolls his ceaseless course, the race of yore, who danced our infancy upon their knee and told our marveling boyhood legends store of their strange ventures happy by land or sea. How are they blotted from the things that be? How few, all weak and withered of their force, wait on the verge of dark eternity, like stranded wrecks, the tide returning harsh. To sweep them from our sight, time rolls his ceaseless course. Now we getting into the juicy stuff. This is where the story really starts getting good, in a sense. Another century and the seeds of revolution began to germinate. Tyranny and oppression eventually produced a harvest of bloodshed, rapine and war. Rapine. In this was involved the king, the nobility, the gentry, the church, and the people. Neutrality could not exist. All were drawn into a common vortex, and again the Fenwicks appear upon the surface. John Fenwick, the subject of this sketch, Major John Fenwick, having passed through his law studies at Gray's Inn, London, 1640, abandoned his profession for a season and accepted an appointment in the parliamentary army. His first commission reads as follows: "You are hereby ordered and required as major under Colonel Thomas Barris and his regiment of cavalry, which was raised in the country of Westmoreland, to assist the garrison of Carlisle, and to exercise the officers and soldiers under his command according to the discipline of war, and they are hereby required to yield obedience unto you as major of said regiment. And all this you are authorized unto until the pleasure of the Parliament or the Lord General be known, given under my hand and seal at Barnard Castle, 27th of October, 1648. Oliver Cromwell. To John Fenwick, Major. These. Interesting thing. Let's see in my notes, because this is where like I started going ham on the notes. Oh yeah, see, I started going real ham on notes. I know that he was registered March 15th, 1638 at Gray's Inn in London. Is kind of like it was a law school, if you will. Um, I had questions because in the first paragraph towards the end it says that Officer John Fenwick, or after John Fenwick finished his studies at Gray's Inn in 1640, which I think he actually graduated in 1639. 1640, he abandoned his profession to answer a military appointment. That's what I was confused by the way he worded that, because um, he didn't get his first commission from Oliver Cromwell until October 27, 1648. He had graduated from Gray's Inn 1639 and 1640. Not really quite sure like what he did in between that decade. Uh oh, to make note too, to make note where it says here, given under my hand and seal at Barnard Castle the 27th of October 1648, Oliver Cromwell. Um, I had actually discovered that like that castle, there was a Barnard Castle, but by the time this whole story takes place, that's already in like deep ruins. When he says Barnard Castle, he's actually at a tavern in the town of Barnard Castle, which is kind of walled by maybe the original castle, Barnard Castle walls. Um, so at first, like I literally thought that he was at Barnard Castle, and I'm like, well, if he's at Barnard Castle, then he's kind of like just hanging out in ruin, like in a ruined castle. But then, like because the night he was writing this letter, or the night that he stayed at this tavern or whatever, he was entertained by a certain somebody, and that's kind of, it really has no significance or importance whatsoever, but the fact that that night him being entertained by whoever was like recorded and noted, like it kind of like validates and puts Oliver Cromwell like at this place when like he's kind of giving all these appointments out. um October 27, 1648, Oliver Cromwell writes a letter to Fenwick from Barnard Castle ordering him to report to Colonel Thomas Barras to be a major of a cavalry regiment that was raised in Westmoreland and to assist in the garrison of Carlisle, the siege of Carlisle. Like I said, Barnard Castle, the actual Barnard Castle, went into disrepair in the late 1500s. In this letter, he is referring instead to the town Barnard Castle. He stayed at Balgrave's house, which was an inn, in 1648. Which this inn is the second oldest house in the town today. Colonel Thomas Barras, born in 1621, died December 15th, 1648 at age 27. I'm trying to figure out how this guy died. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure he died in battle or died as a prisoner when this particular a particular area was taken back by the royalists. This same year he was given an appointment by Parliament to relieve Holy Island. It says that after he appeared and defeated the enemy royalist, other sources say that the blockade continued after his attempt efforts. Castle's then governor, Captain Batten. In 1643, the castle was taken by parliamentary forces. In 1648, royalist blockades. Captain of the castle wrote to Edward Montagu, 2nd Earl of Manchester, for supplies and reinforcements. Sir Arthur Haslerig from Newcastle sent supplies to Holy Island. After the trial and sentencing of the king, John Fenwick was detailed as commander of cavalry. Great Richard Barras was taken prisoner by royalists in 1649 near... I don't even know what I wrote there. Oh, yeah, because royalists did siege Carlisle in 1648 for a short period. They sieged it April 29th of 1648. And Colonel Thomas Barras, who John Fenwick was under, he died later that December. And I think when the royalists sieged it back, he either got killed or he was a prisoner and died later. Something along those lines. We'll have to iron that out later. In the same year, he was ordered by the Parliament with horse and dragon to. Oh, you know what? Before we move on, real quick, let's check out. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Uh, what did I call that? Come on. What? Balgrave's house. Bernard's Castle. There we go. Balgrave's home. Balgrave's house. There's a bunch of pictures of it. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Here's an old picture of it. Right there. This building here. It actually is a pretty neat looking building. Look at this old one here. It's the second oldest house in this area. Interesting enough, it probably was still built after the actual castle was in disrepair. Okay, so you are no, right here. In the same year, he was ordered by the Parliament with horse and dragon. That was interesting. That sent me down a little bunny trail there, bunny hole. Dragoon is really probably what this is meant to say, not actual dragon. To relieve Holy Island Castle in Durham. It was besieged by the royal troops and well nigh captured when it wasn't captured, by the way, when he appeared and defeated the enemy. See, this is where one of those moments where we kind of like romanticize the situation. In the same year, he was ordered by the Parliament with horse and dragon to relieve Holy Island Castle in Durham. It was besieged by the royal troops and well nigh captured when he appeared and defeated the enemy. According to like what I've been gathering from research, it kind of went like Parliament has sieged this castle. The royalists had created a blockade that prevented the castle from getting supplies and food and all that, supplies, everything, right? And so the governor of that castle wrote a letter to the Earl of Manchester asking for relief and supplies. The Earl of Manchester reached out to, who was it that actually gave the demand? Sir Arthur Haslerig, which was probably like in Parliament or something. And he gave the order to John Fenwick and his cavalry regiment. They go to relieve the castle and bring like revisions and supplies and all that. And a lot of other places that actually states that like although the supplies and relief that John Fenwick brought, the castle continued to be blockaded by the royalists even for weeks after John Fenwick's efforts. So this is just another one of them. This is just a perfect example of exactly what he was talking about in the first few pages, where the way he tells the story is that the castle was besieged by the royal troops and captured, and that wasn't the case. It was just a distant blockade that prevented supplies and things that were needed. And when John Fenwick arrived, he appeared and defeated the enemy. Really, really, really far stretch. He was an active and efficient officer, probably so, having the confidence of Parliament and protector. After the trial and sentence of the king, he was detailed as commander of cavalry in conjunction with the foot troops under Colonel Hacker, Colonel Hanks, and Lieutenant Colonel Payer to attend the execution. The order ran in this wise. These are therefore to will and require you to see the said sentence executed in the open streets before Whitehall upon the morrow, being the 13th of this instant month of January, between the hours of 10 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon of the same day, with full effect. And these are to require all officers and soldiers and others, the good people of this nation of England, to be assisting unto you in this service, given under our hands and seals. I think maybe we've been streaming almost 2.5 hours. I think maybe I should stop right here, and we can pick up this catch up on the next stream, because this is where I went really, really, really deep, and I started learning about just kind of like how that whole time period like really went down, and like, you know, King Charles the First kind of like is the enemy through this whole story, and you kind of feel that way, especially as an American, because a lot of this like behavior and energy and kind of like is what kind of became the American Revolution a couple hundred years later. By the time you get through the whole story, you kind of like switch sides, and you feel sorry for the king, and you kind of feel like the parliamentary side was more of like the bad guys. Colonel Hacker, Colonel Hanks, and Lieutenant Colonel Payer. There was so much, man. There was so much. Colonel Hacker was hung after the restoration of the crown in 1660. October 1966, he was hung at the gallows. Colonel Hanks is not actually, I don't know if it's a typo or he messed up, but it's actually Colonel Hunks, Hunck's. And then the this one here, Payer, I don't know if it's a typo or what, but I found it spelled Phayor. Then I found it in other areas spelled Phray. And then officially, Lieutenant Colonel Robert, PhaYre. He escaped punishment by marrying the daughter of Sir Thomas Herbert. His second wife, Elizabeth, was the king's personal attendant during his imprisonment and execution. Colonel Hercules Hunks saved himself by giving evidence against Hacker and Daniel Extel, and for his refusal to sign the death warrant. When he refused to sign it, Oliver Cromwell called him a forward, peevish fellow. Basically called him a pussy, and forged his name down for him. So, I think where the confusion comes from is that, like, Colonel Hunks and Colonel Payer or Pryor or Prayer, these guys were participating in the execution, but they were kind of too afraid. They, rightfully so too, they were too afraid to kind of, or at least Hercules Hunks was too afraid to sign it, and their names actually got forged or added later. Hunks, his name got forged because, like I said, Oliver Cromwell basically called him a coward and signed his name for him, and we find out all that later on when the restoration of the crown and then the parliamentary trial. We find out that and that's how he kind of got out of it, because he didn't sign it. His name was forged, and he gave up the people who he snitched. He made a deal. We know how that goes. Hacker. Hacker was was his claim of it all in trial was that like he was just a soldier, he was just doing his duties, and he almost got away with it, and he almost got immunity with everyone else. The reason he didn't is because Hunk snitched on him, and the thing that condemned Hacker was he almost was going to get immunity, and then they discovered that he actually still had the physical original execution warrant in his possession, and they were like, "You're done." So anyway, I should probably stop there. I should stop here, and then we'll dive into all this on the next one during the catch up. That we'll finish this catch up because we're gonna go all the way up to page. This whole catch up thing is up to page 15, and then we're gonna just start just dissecting page by page from that point on. So we'll end it there. And when we do page by page, it's going to be way more in depth and like deeper because there's so much more there's so much more notes and things I found and other bunny trails and routes that I went down briefly from all these pages that I'm reading. I'm just kind of like not briefly going over it all. Yeah. Well, that's that. Adios.